Remedy, the developers behind Control, talk about the Xbox Series S and how it isn't as simple as just lowering textures and resolutions in order to optimize for the console. The Xbox Series S has been a really interesting topic of debate when it comes to how developers feel about the console when developing games for it. And before we get into this any further, if you guys are new here and you enjoy what you see throughout this video, I'd really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button to help this channel grow and help grow this community so we can have great conversations in the comments below. Well, it looks like we got another point of view, and this comes from Remedy, the developers behind Control. On IGN's YouTube channel, communications director Thomas Pua talked about optimizing games for the lowest powered next generation machine, that being the Xbox Series S, and here is what he had to say. Xbox Series S, well, it's no different from the previous generations, where the system with the lowest specs does end up dictating a few of the things that you're going to do. Before you're going to have to run on that system, right? It's very easy to say that you just lower your resolution and texture quality and off you go. It's just nowhere near that simple. It sounds good when you say it, but every engine is built in a different way. It's another thing when gamers might be like, the game engine does all of these things. Well, it depends. Are you making an engine that's much more GPU bound or CPU bound? Which are you taxing a whole lot more? Well, we kind of tax both in Control because we have a lot of physics, but then we have a lot of ray tracing effects. That makes a huge difference, especially on Xbox Series S. Now, I found that quote kind of interesting, specifically the second part where he talked about the fact that the engine is going to be the thing that makes it a little bit more difficult to optimize for the Xbox Series S, because it looks like Remedy isn't the first developer to have said this. With Metro Exodus, the developers there also had a similar thought when it comes to the Xbox Series S, saying the RAM is not an issue for us currently, but GPU performance presents challenges for future titles. Our current renderer is designed for high spatial and temporal resolution, 4K at 60. It is stochastic by nature. Dropping any of those will require us to do more expensive calculations, dropping performance even further. We have a compromise solution right now, but I am not satisfied with that. We've also seen plenty of examples as developers saying that it has been easy to develop for the Xbox Series S. This one here, the Dirt 5 developer Codemasters claimed that it was easy scaling for the Xbox Series S. And then Bloober, the team behind Medium, also praised the Xbox Series S when they were developing the game for the platform. And then finally we get to Fat Shark, the developers behind Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, who say that the Series S won't significantly hinder the game development process. Now, I'm not going to go through all the quotes in these articles. I've covered this in past videos, but I will have these links in the description below if you want to go into them and see their exact quote on the Xbox Series S. Now, continuing on here, Thomas Pua also makes a really good point and something to keep in mind as we go forward throughout this generation, and that is that going forward into the future, making a brand new game for the Xbox Series S should be easier because they're going to be able to keep the hardware in mind compared to when they're optimizing old games that were developed for older generation consoles. The exact quote being, it's a lot more difficult to engineer an old game to make sure it works on everything. But now that we're building the future games and we know these are the systems it has to run on, we take into account from day one, and we can ensure that all platforms have as good of an experience as possible. And I mean, that kind of just continues with the narrative that it really does come down to those development kits, that the fact that the Xbox sent those development kits out late, we are seeing cross-generational games being optimized, and that's going to be harder to do than building a game from the ground up for these next generation consoles. But we're probably not going to see a game that fully utilizes the complete power of the development kits and of these next gen consoles for a little while, maybe a year, maybe two after the release. Continues on here saying, we appreciate that there's a lower barrier of entry for an action experience with the Xbox Series S, but the more hardware you have, the more you kind of have to ultimately compromise a little bit when you are like a smaller studio like us, where we just can't spend so much time making sure that all these platforms are super good. Of course, we need to do that, but there's just a difference in doing that because it takes a huge amount of resources, not just engineering, but QA, the huge QA overhead to test so many different platforms. Now, this quote here is actually extremely interesting because of the fact that when Jason Ronald was on the Iron Lords podcast, he specifically talked about QA as being one of the reasons that performance may not be as optimized as we expect it to be. The pandemic has had a huge effect on QA. Jason Ronald was saying that there used to be these big labs where people would go in and test these games out, and now with everybody working at home, it just isn't feasible. So things are going to be missed, and that's completely understandable. But at the end of the day, I think the news to take out of this that is encouraging is they do mention that once games start being built from the ground up for these next gen consoles, I think a lot of the optimization things that we're seeing that we may not be happy with will probably get better. And once things start to get back to normal with the QA, I think that will also help a lot. I find the Xbox Series S to be a really interesting console just because of the price point and what it can do at that price point. And I think it is a little beast. We're seeing all the next generation games run on it. And I think that if you look at the price of that console and you compare it to what you would be paying or getting for a PC at $300, it is still a great deal and great value. But anyways, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the Xbox Series S. Do you think there are going to be further optimization issues as we go through this generation, or do you think it's performing adequately now and it's just going to continue to get better? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you are new here and you enjoy what you see throughout this video, I'd really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button to help this channel grow and help grow this community so we can have some great conversations in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.